My name is Nell Cardiff, 37 years old, for 11 months. My mother fined me $50 every Friday for the wheelchair ramp I built with my own hands for her mother. My grandmother died on that ramp. She crossed it for the last time last October. Wheeled out to an ambulance. 44 white envelopes. I never opened a single one. At the annual meeting in August, she stood at a podium and read every charge aloud to 104 households. Like a court clerk reading an indictment, she thought that night would end it. She didn't know the woman in the third row worked in the county recorder's office, and she didn't know what I'd found at the bottom of my grandmother's green steel file box, a paper with my mother's own name on it, signed in 1996, never handed over. This is a story about property lines and about how families draw them too, usually in pencil, usually without telling anyone. If you've ever stayed quiet about something only because the person doing it was blood, leave a comment. I read all of them. Every Friday at 7:20 in the morning, a gray Mercury Grand Marquis slowed in front of my house on Kessler Row. It never fully stopped, just rolled past at the speed of judgment, paused at my mailbox, and a woman in a navy wool coat got out with an envelope and a roll of tape. She walked up the ramp. That's the part I need you to sit with. The ramp was the violation. 6 boards, 32 feet, a 1 in 12 rise. I calculated myself. She used it every single week to deliver the notice condemning it, and she never once appeared to notice she was doing it. She taped the envelope to my door, pressed the 2 top corners down twice, always twice, because one press might let it fall, and walked back with her chin up like she'd just served a subpoena. That woman was my mother, Roberta Cardiff. Everyone in Ashgrove Bend calls her Bobby. She has run our homeowners association since October 2019. I want to be fair to her, because unfairness would be the easiest thing in this story and the least true. She did it by the book. Every Wednesday, an original notice went out by certified mail to my address of record, exactly as Section 11.2 of our covenants requires. Then every Friday, she taped a courtesy copy to my door. The mailed one was for the law, the taped one was for the neighbors. I'm a licensed land surveyor, 14 years. Surveyors keep records the way other people keep grudges, carefully, chronologically, and long past the point where it's healthy. So the envelopes went into a shoebox on my kitchen counter, in order, the date penciled on each flap. I never opened them, not one. People ask about that more than anything. I knew what was inside. Notice of violation. Unapproved structural modification, front elevation, $50, remit to the association. What I didn't want was to see my mother's handwriting 44 times. There's a particular loop she puts on a capital C. She taught me to make it when I was 6. My daughter Bertie is 12. She'd stand in the kitchen doorway in her socks with her cereal and say, "Is she here again?" And I'd say, "It's fine, bug. It's just paperwork." Too fast, too calm. I heard myself and kept doing it anyway. And somewhere around envelope 20, I understood I wasn't protecting her from anything. I was teaching her. That's what nobody tells you about swallowing something in front of a child. They don't learn that it didn't hurt. They learn how to swallow. 47 Fridays came and went, and I got 44 envelopes. She skipped the week of the January ice storm, when the power was out 4 days, and she skipped the week of my grandmother's birthday. I have turned that second one over more times than I can count. A woman can spend 11 months finding her own daughter and still stop for 7 days, because it was the week her mother was born. I don't know where to put that. I still don't. It would be so much simpler if she had sent 46. $50 a week doesn't break anybody. That was never the point, and both of us knew it. The point was the ritual. The whole neighborhood learning that Friday morning meant Bobby Cardiff paying a visit to her daughter's house with a roll of tape. Friday used to be my favorite day of the week. I'll get to why. Friday used to mean coffee on that porch with my grandmother. Opal Vandeveer, 86 years old, 5'1", a woman who ironed pillowcases. Her house at 1348. Kessler Row is older than the neighborhood around it, and so is she. And both facts turned out to matter more than anyone guessed. In February of 2024, she fell in her bathroom at 4 in the morning and lay on the tile for 2 hours before she could reach the phone. I was in Indianapolis when the call came. I took 2 weeks off, drove down with Bertie and 4 garbage bags of our clothes, and we never went back. That first Saturday, I went to the lumberyard out on Highway 31 and bought pressure-treated 2x10s. A ramp has a math to it. 1 inch of rise for every 12 inches of run. That's the federal standard. And it isn't a suggestion. Go steeper, and you've built a slide for a woman who weighs 98 pounds. Her porch sat 32 inches off the grade. So, 32 feet of ramp, a landing at the turn, handrails at 34 inches, 6 boards across the deck of it. I built the whole thing in a weekend with a circular saw and a level. And Bertie held the dumb end of the tape measure and complained about the cold. And my grandmother sat in the kitchen window watching us like we were television. She used it for 8 months. She kept the porch light burning the entire time. Wouldn't hear of turning it off, not in daylight, not at 2 in the afternoon in July. I asked her once why, and she said, "So people know somebody's home," which is either the most practical sentence she ever said or the saddest. And I've never been able to decide. One evening that spring, sitting out on the ramp with our feet on the rail, she took my hand and said, "Bobby does the paperwork. You understand the land." I heard a compliment. I want to be honest about that. I was 41 hours into a bad week, and I heard my grandmother say I was the one who understood. And it went down like something warm. It took me 2 more years and a steel file box to hear it the other way, to hear a verdict in it, to understand that my grandmother had been sorting her own daughter into a category since before I could walk, and had never once thought to check whether the girl agreed to be sorted. And here is the part I refused to save for later, because saving it would be a cheat. My mother drove her to 40 dialysis appointments. 40, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 years of them. Before I ever came back, my mother learned to flush a line. My mother called the insurance company so many times she knew the hold music by its measures. My mother slept in a vinyl recliner in room 314 for 11 nights in a row in the winter of 2023, while I was 3 hours north answering emails and telling myself I called enough. Whatever else you decide about Roberta Cardiff by the end of this, decide it knowing that Opal died on a Thursday in October. At 6:40 in the evening, I was in the room. I had her hand. My mother had stepped down to the pharmacy on the first floor to pick up a prescription that my grandmother would never take. And by the time she came back up with the white paper bag, it was over. She set the bag down carefully. 40 minutes. My mother missed the last 40 minutes of her mother's life because she was downstairs getting her something she needed. I have thought about those 40 minutes more than any other detail in this entire story, and I would give up almost anything I own to hand them back to her. 2 weeks later, the will was admitted to probate in Howard County. Everything came to me: the house, the half-acre behind it, the pear tree her mother planted in 1946. My mother filed a contest inside the 3-month window the statute allows, and I don't blame her for it. And I've never said that out loud until now. It was dismissed in June. The estate closed in July. The personal representative's deed was recorded. My name went into the index, and everybody went back to work. The first envelope was taped to my door on September 4th. My mother lost in one court, so she moved the fight to a court where she was the judge. I want to walk you through how a person legally finds her own daughter in the state of Indiana, because the horror of it lives in the procedure. You can't simply start charging. First comes a written notice of violation, and with it a 14-day opportunity to cure. 14 days to take the thing down. If the owner requests a hearing, and I did, the board has to give her one within 21 days. And no fine may accrue while that hearing is pending. The statute is careful about this. My mother was more careful. She sent the notice on the 6th day after the estate closed. She waited out the cure period to the hour. She scheduled the hearing on day 19, not day 22. She kept a log. The hearing was a Tuesday night in the clubhouse trailer. 4 board members behind a folding table. My mother in the center chair. The 5th seat vacant since spring. I brought photographs, my slope calculation, and the original architectural approval from February 2024, with her own signature at the bottom of it. Then she gave her argument. And here is the thing about my mother's argument. It was almost right. The ramp was approved as a reasonable accommodation for a disabled resident of this property. That resident passed away in October. There is no longer an accommodation. What remains is a 32-foot wooden structure on a front elevation, and front elevations are governed by Appendix B. 4-0 to deny. Denny Kurtz, the treasurer, read my paperwork twice and wouldn't look at me when he raised his hand. She called me Mrs. Cardiff for the entire meeting, my own mother, in a room with 11 people in it. And here's the part I don't enjoy telling you. Technically, she was right. The ramp doesn't serve anybody anymore. Bertie takes the steps. I take the steps. I kept it because my grandmother crossed it. And that is not a legal argument. That is grief wearing the costume of a rule, which, if you're keeping score, is precisely what my mother had been doing since September. I learned the costume from her. We were both standing in that trailer wearing it, and only one of us had a gavel. 2 weeks later, Cy Nadeau flagged me down at the end of his driveway. 81 years old, retired tool and die out at the plant. Hands like a catcher's mitt. Widower since 2016. He asked me into his kitchen and set a cigar tin on the table between us. $25 a month, 4 years. A tomato trellis that stood 12 inches taller than his fence line. He appealed once, lost, and after that he simply paid, every month, out of a Social Security check. Inside the tin were canceled checks, not envelopes, checks. I kept mine too, he said. Mine's just got holes punched in it. I sat in that kitchen for a long time. He never took the trellis down. He just paid for the privilege of leaving it up, which I understand better than I'd like. At the mailboxes that same week, Marva Selk mentioned that her pension comes to $1,180 a month. She said it the way people apologize for weather. I filed it away without knowing yet what I'd need it for. People ask why I didn't just hire a lawyer in September and be finished. I had priced it. A real estate attorney in Kokomo runs $325 an hour. The fine was $50 a week. Fighting it would have cost more than a decade of Fridays. And my mother, who had balanced an association budget for 7 years, understood that arithmetic better than anyone in this story. The fine was sized to be cheaper to endure than to fight. That isn't an accident. That's a design. My Uncle Perry called twice that fall from Sun City, Arizona. Don't make it a whole thing, kiddo. You know how your mother is. Families get past this. The only person who said anything out loud was Ardith Sowles, 74, retired hospice aide, my grandmother's best friend for 50 years. A woman who has never whispered in her life. She came across the street on a Friday with an apple cake, watched the gray marquee roll off toward the trailer, and stood there on my ramp with her jaw set. Then she looked past me, over the back fence, out toward the half-acre and the old pear tree holding down the far corner of it, like it pays rent. Your grandmother owned more of this neighborhood than people remember. Honey, a good deal more. I tried peace first. I want that on the record. In February, I invited my mother to dinner, and she came, because appearances matter to her, and a daughter's table is an appearance. I made pot roast, Opal's recipe, which in hindsight was either an olive branch or a provocation. We were polite for 20 minutes, her hydrangeas, Perry's grandkids. Then I put my fork down and made my offer. I would pay the balance that night, all of it, $1,260 as of that Friday, plus whatever it came to by the end. Check written at the table. The fines stop. I reached for my checkbook, and I watched something cross her face. Disappointment. I've turned it over 100 times and can't call it anything else. As if I had offered to forfeit a game she was finally winning. It was never about the money, Nell. Then what was it about? She lined her silverware up straight on the napkin, took her time, and gave me the sentence I've thought about nearly every day since. A neighborhood is like a family. It only works if somebody holds the line. Rules are how I love you. A pause. It's the only way I was taught. I don't think she heard herself say the last part, but I heard it, and I've been walking back through it ever since, because those 7 words are a door, and behind that door is my grandmother. The following Tuesday, I drove over to Thurber Court to return a china platter that had been Opal's. My mother let me in, went to the kitchen to find a box, and I had 3 minutes alone in her living room. The family albums sit on the bottom shelf, 1988 through 2005, spines labeled in her school secretary hand. I opened 3 of them. My grandmother is in every frame. Opal at the head of tables, Opal at graduations, at baptisms, at the center of things, radiant in a way you cannot fake. My mother is barely in those books at all. And standing there with an album open on my knees, I finally did the arithmetic, and it broke something that has not repaired. My mother wasn't missing from the family album. My mother is the reason the family album exists. She held the camera for 15 years, and not one person in this family ever thought to take it out of her hands and turn it around. On the wall above the shelf hangs the big one, 4th of July, 1997. Half the neighborhood under the pear tree, kids on a blanket, a folding table of casseroles going soft. Opal is dead center with a pitcher of iced tea, laughing at something outside the frame. You have to hunt for my mother. She is at the very edge, holding a tray, half turned away. One more thing before we go further. My father, Dale Cardiff, died in March of 2019. Heart attack in the driveway, 61, no warning at all. My mother was the one who found him. She was elected president of the Ashgrove Bend Homeowners Association that October. I said something to Ardith once about the timing. Something unkind. She set down her cup. 7 months after that funeral, your mother put her own name up for it. You know why, honey? Because it was the only room left where somebody had to listen to her. The certified letter came in June. Notice of intent to record a lien. Balance, $2,240. climbing every Friday, if it went unpaid. The association would record a claim against my property under the Indiana statute. I read it standing in the hallway with my grandmother's clock ticking behind me. And for the first time in 10 months, my hands were not steady. A lion is not a nuisance. A lion is a cloud on your title. It sits in the county records under your name. It follows the house, not the person. It complicates a refinance and poisons a sale. And to a surveyor whose whole career is built on clean records and true lines, it is a stain you cannot power wash off. She was not charging me $50 a week anymore. She was reaching for the deed itself. Then I noticed the fine print at the bottom, the part that names where such instruments get recorded, the Office of the Howard County Recorder. My mother had just handed me directions to the one place on earth where every lie about land goes to die. If I had been her, I would have thought very carefully before pointing me there. I went to the courthouse on my lunch hour, not to fight, to check. A threat on letterhead and an instrument in the record are two very different animals. The Howard County Recorder's Office smells like toner and old paper, which I happen to love. Behind the counter was a woman about my age, with reading glasses on a chain, and the unhurried competence of someone who has watched 3 generations fight over dirt. Her nameplate said S. Achterberg, Deputy Recorder. I gave her my parcel number. She typed, then looked up with a curious tilt. Vandeveer, she said. I recorded a personal representative's deed on a Vandeveer file last summer. Kessler Row. I remember the chain. It was clean. You don't see clean every day. Her name is Simone. She checked the index twice. No lien on my lot. Nothing filed. Not yet. She doesn't only work in the records room. She lives in Ashgrove Bend, Lot 39, the brick ranch near the entrance. Small county. I thanked her and turned to go. And that is when she said what she probably says to nervous owners every week. Records don't care who's louder, Ms. Cardiff. Folks out your way would be surprised what the index actually shows. She said it the way you'd mention rain coming. That Saturday, I opened the gate in the back fence and walked the half-acre, end to end. Officially, it is Lot 41, half an acre of flat ground behind my house. Opal's pear tree still holding down the far corner like it pays rent. Except you would hardly know a garden was ever there. 7 years ago, the association hauled in a long white office trailer and set it on blocks. Ashgrove Bend, HOA, says the vinyl sign. Office hours, Tuesday and Thursday. Beside it, a gravel pad. 12 spaces striped with landscape timbers. Behind that, the metal-roofed pavilion where they hold their meetings, their potlucks, their Easter egg hunts. The civic heart of the neighborhood, sitting in my grandmother's garden. I pulled out the association's glossy welcome map. Lot 41 is shaded green, labeled Common Area, and some quiet professional alarm began to ring. Because I had studied the original plat years ago out of family curiosity, and I could not remember any common area drawn behind Lot 9. People ask why I hadn't checked sooner. When you inherit, there is no closing, no bank, no title insurance. Nobody hands you a chain of title because nobody is lending against it. The deed gets recorded and everyone goes back to work. And I had always believed my grandfather deeded that ground to the association back in the 90s, because that is what my mother told me during probate, waving me off mid-sentence. That's community property. Honey, don't go stirring papers. I had never once had reason to doubt my own mother about land. So I ordered a full title examination. Every deed, every plat, every easement, every tax record. Back to when this place was a cornfield with a ribbon on it. The county took 3 weeks. Those 3 weeks were not triumph, they were dread. Some nights I sat in my truck thinking, what if the answer is ordinary? What if there's a 50-year lease in a drawer somewhere? And I am just a woman with a shoebox building a courthouse case out of a mother who doesn't love me the way I needed? If you have ever kept every receipt just to prove to yourself that you weren't crazy, tell me in the comments. That shoebox had started to feel like a second heartbeat in my kitchen. Then the mailing tube came. Plat Book 12, page 47, recorded 1984. And there it was in the original surveyor's own line work. Lot 41, not shaded, not dedicated, not labeled common anything. A private, numbered, buildable lot, same as mine, same as everyone's. 1984, warranty deed. Developer to Emmett and Opal Vandeveer. Joint tenants with right of survivorship. 2011, Emmett dies. Title vests in Opal alone. Last summer. Personal representative's deed. Current owner of record of lot 41, Nell Cardiff. No lease, no easement, no license, no dedication, no conveyance of any kind in 41 years. And stapled behind the deeds, the part that put my hand over my mouth, the tax records. Every year since 1984, the taxes on Lot 41 billed to and paid by Vandeveer, then the estate, then me, the office, the parking pad, the pavilion, the podium my mother stands behind every month. All of it sitting on ground she never owned. The association never owned, and she knew the association had never owned. While I waited on the county, Ardith filled in the parts no record book holds. She sat at my kitchen table with iced tea and told me about 1984 when this was still the Vandeveer place. Emmett and Opal sold 40 acres to a developer out of Indianapolis and kept exactly 2 things. The old farmhouse they lived in, which the plat would later call Lot 9, and the field directly behind it, which became Lot 41. Elbow room, my grandfather called it. Opal called it her garden before the ink was dry. The developer had plans. The original drawings showed a community building up by the entrance. Then he went bankrupt in 1991. It never got built, and the neighborhood grew up with nowhere to gather. So Opal, being Opal, opened her gate. Easter egg hunts among the bean rows. 4th of July tables under the pear tree. The neighborhood held its picnics on her ground for 30 years, and people stopped remembering it was hers at all, and she never once corrected them. Being needed keeps a neighborhood warm, Ardith said. That's how she put it, every single time. Then Ardith set down her glass and got to the part that made my scalp prickle. She wasn't a fool, your grandmother. She kept paper, that green box of hers. You ought to go find it. The green box was 8 feet from us, in the hall closet, where it had waited patiently through 11 months of Fridays. The certified records and Opal's green steel file box came together on my kitchen table on a Thursday night in July, and I will remember that table for the rest of my life. The first folder was labeled Garden Lot in my grandmother's back-slanted hand. 27 letters, 1 a year, 1997 through 2023, each addressed to the board of the Ashgrove Bend Homeowners Association. Courteous as a church supper and unambiguous as a survey stake. She was pleased to allow the association the use of her property. Lot 41. The use remained by her permission alone. The permission was revocable at any time. Nothing in the arrangement was ever to be mistaken for a transfer. The 2019 letter, written when they asked to put the trailer out there, is notarized and went certified mail. Stapled to it is the green card, signed on receipt in handwriting. I would know anywhere because it used to sign my permission slips, Roberta Cardiff, 27 letters from my grandmother, 44 envelopes from my mother. Both of those women believed paperwork was a form of love. They only disagreed about who to send it to. And then, underneath that folder, at the bottom of the box, I found the other one, a warranty deed, typed, complete, dated June 14, 1996. Grantor, Opal Vandeveer, grantee, Roberta Vandeveer Cardiff, conveying lot 41, signed, notarized, never delivered, never recorded, and in the upper left corner, in pencil, in my grandmother's hand, 2 words, not yet. I took it to Yolanda Prewitt, a real estate attorney in Kokomo. She read it twice and set down her glasses. Legally, this paper never existed. A deed that isn't delivered conveys nothing. Signed, notarized, framed on a wall, none of it matters. She looked at me. In the family, Ms. Cardiff, I'm afraid it may be the only thing that ever did. My mother was not paranoid. My mother was right. That ground was supposed to be hers. The one person on earth with authority to decide it had signed her name, driven to a notary, then put it in a steel box and kept it there. 29 years. Bobby does the paperwork. You understand the land. It turns out my grandmother did the paperwork too. She was only better at not handing it over. That same week, I sent the board a written records request. Indiana gives every member of a homeowners association the right to inspect its financial records, its invoices, its bank records, its minutes. Refusing isn't an inconvenience, it's a violation. They complied in 9 days. I spent 3 nights at that table with a legal pad. 214 fines in 7 years. 186 of them against 11 households, all 11 on Kessler Row, the oldest street in Ashgrove Bend, the smallest houses, the lowest assessed values in the subdivision, Cy Nadeau, Marva Selk, and the woman who ran against my mother for president in 2019 and lost. In one night, I learned that my mother was a predator and a person who had been left behind. And I have never worked out how to hold both of those in the same chest. Yolanda Prewitt read the file twice, then walked me through it like a property line. In Indiana, adverse possession takes 10 years. They've had 7, but that isn't what ends it. She tapped the tax bundle. This state has a statute most people never hear of. A claimant has to have paid the property taxes the entire time. Not as evidence, as a requirement. Your association hasn't paid $1 on Lot 41 in 41 years. They could sit out there a century and get nowhere. Then she picked up the letters. And possession that begins with permission is never hostile. Permission poisons the clock. 27 letters ends it before it starts. Legally, they are exactly what Opal made them. Guests, 3 options, revoke, demand possession in 30 days, eject them, sue for the use they'd had, or put the truth on the record and let them come to terms. Then she said the thing I needed to hear and didn't want to. And you cannot collect rent for those 7 years. Your grandmother gave it away. Nobody bills for a gift after the fact. The annual meeting notice came on association letterhead. Agenda enclosed. Item 4, delinquent accounts, to be read into the record. Item 5, community lot improvement, paving and expanded parking. Special assessment, $62,000. They were going to pave my grandmother's garden and bill the neighborhood for the privilege. I did the division, standing in my driveway. $62,000 across 104 households is $596.15 apiece. And under Indiana law, anything that raises a member's assessment by more than $500 a year requires approval at 2 separate membership meetings. By a 2/3 vote, my mother had scheduled 1 meeting. I drove to Thurber Court on a Sunday. Yolanda advised against it. She said surprise was worth money. I went anyway, because a woman careful enough to use 2 pieces of tape deserves 1 careful warning. She let me in and made coffee. Neither of us drank it. I told her to pull the deed on lot 41. 1 phone call, 5 minutes. She didn't move, and then she started talking, and I let her finish. I drove her to 40 dialysis appointments, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 years. In the dark half the time, I learned her medications in alphabetical order. I called that insurance company 31 times over 1 denial, and I won it. I washed her sheets. I learned to flush a line so the nurse wouldn't come out twice a week. I slept in a vinyl recliner in room 314 for 11 nights in January and never complained to anybody. Then you came home and built a ramp, and she told everyone at church about the ramp. You were in the room at the end and you got her hand. I was downstairs getting her prescription. I will live with that for the rest of my life, and I will do it quietly. But don't you ever tell me I wasn't there. I did the work. You got the moment. Then you got the house. You were gone 12 years. I stayed. And nobody writes the one who stayed into a will. They write the one they miss. I didn't argue. There was nothing in it to argue with. I said, I know. I've always known. We stood in her kitchen a while. Then she said, and you kept the house anyway. I didn't have an answer. I still don't. Her association binder lay open on the dining table, the way it always is. 25 years of her handwriting, tabbed and chronological. Nobody reads those. I'm not sure anyone but me ever has. I turned to 2011. That was the year Ashgrove Bend voted on whether to bring itself under the Indiana Homeowners Association Act, the statute that gives a board its power to fine, to lien, to enforce. An association formed before 2009 falls under it only if a majority of its members elect to. The tally sheet is in pencil: 47 yes, 12 no, 45 no response, 47 out of 104, 45.2%. And underneath, in pen, in the secretary's hand that used to sign my permission slips, carried every fine, every hearing, every gavel for 15 years, standing on a paper that was never valid. And she wrote the number herself. Word traveled ahead of me that week, because my mother made sure it did. By Wednesday, the temperature at the mailboxes had dropped 10 degrees. Opal's granddaughter got everything, and now she's making trouble for the neighborhood. Isolation is a tool, same as a lien. Ardith brought roses in a coffee can. She brings flowers to a paperwork fight. I packed the way a surveyor stakes a job. The certified plat in its mylar tube. The title chain, 41 years of tax receipts. Opal's 27 letters. Green card still stapled to the last. The shoebox, 44 envelopes in order. And 1 more envelope, new, white, thick. I'm not telling you about that one yet. Bertie sat sorting receipts and said, without looking up, do you hate her? No, I'm afraid of turning into her. 2 different things, and it took me 37 years to tell them apart. Later, I drew a line down a legal pad. What I could take, what I actually want. The left column filled fast and ugly. Evict them in 30 days. Read her binder aloud from that podium the way she meant to read mine. The right column was 3 lines. In my grandmother's voice more than mine. Keep the garden. Come home to a neighborhood, not a battlefield. Don't teach Bertie the left column. The meeting convened at 7 on a Thursday in August, under the pavilion on lot 41, which nobody but me knew was the punchline. 2 box fans pushing soup-warm Indiana air, folding chairs, bug spray, yellow agendas. Denny Kurtz sat at the treasurer's table with his ledgers. Simone Achterberg sat in the third row with a manila folder in her lap, because the notice had come to lot 39 too, and she checks things before paying for them. My mother stood at the podium in the navy blazer with a gavel she bought herself. Minutes approved, budget reviewed, brisk, competent, in command. Then she squared her shoulders the way she does on Friday mornings. The board believes in transparency. Delinquencies will be read into the record. And she read them, not the total, each one, same violation, same ramp, same $50, date by date, September to August, while my neighbors looked at me the way people look at a wreck. I let every date land. I have held a rod steady in July sun for lesser reasons. Then item 5, the rendering. Asphalt gray and optimistic, 20 new spaces, expanded office pad, curbing around, I noted this, the exact spot where the pear tree stands. The assessment comes to $62,000, divided among all households. I turned my agenda over, wrote on the back, and stood. 62,000 divided by 104 is $596.15. I held it up so the back rows could see it. Marva Selk, Cy Nadeau, the Ferrises on the corner with the twins, and under Indiana law, an assessment raising a member's dues more than $500 a year requires 2 separate meetings and a 2/3 vote. This is the first meeting. Then I sat down. The gavel came down, and a hand went up in the third row, unhurried, the way a hand goes up when it already knows the answer. Point of information, Madam President. Simone didn't stand at first. Before you continue, who do you think owns Lot 41? The association owns it. Obviously, this lot has been community property since... I ask, Simone said, gently, terribly. Because I record the deeds for this county. All of them, she stood, folder in hand like a citation. And before I vote to pave this lot with my own money, you should know the county has no record, none, of this association owning 1 square foot of the ground we are on. The gavel came down again. For the first time in 7 years, it didn't work. Through the noise came Denny Kurtz's voice, a man doing math he didn't like. Bobby, whose lot are we sitting on? Every head turned toward the woman with the map tube. I stood slowly, because fast never surveyed anything, and asked Denny, not my mother, for his table. I uncapped the tube and unrolled the plat, weighting the corners with his ledger and an iced tea jar. The crackle of mylar was the only sound under the roof. Plat Book 12, page 47, recorded 1984. A private numbered lot, never dedicated as anything, deeded that year to Emmett and Opal Vandeveer. The tax receipts, 41 years, Opal's 2019 letter, read aloud, the green card held up, received and filed by the secretary, signed, Roberta Cardiff, then 2 more pages, 214 fines, 186 on 1 street, and the tally sheet from 2011, 47 out of 104, carried. I did not look at my mother while the pavilion turned to her. I looked at the pear tree. The room turned, and a room that turns is a dangerous animal. Somebody called for the board to resign. Somebody shouted, we should evict the office and see how she liked a notice on her door. I raised my hand for quiet, and the room I'd never governed gave it to me. Nobody is getting evicted, I said. And before anything else, my mother drove her own mother to 40 dialysis appointments. Nobody in this room did that, including me. I laid the thick white envelope on the mylar. An invoice, Fair rent on the office and parking you've had on my property. $310 a month, 84 months, $26,040. It has no legal force. You cannot bill anyone for a gift after the fact. I printed it because my mother spent 11 months teaching me that a number on paper says what talking can't. Here's what I'll take instead. A lease. $1 a year, 5 years, signed tonight, 4 conditions. All 44 fines canceled, the lien withdrawn, every late fee dead, $2,540. The paving project is dead. An independent audit of all 214 fines, and an appeals committee of 3 homeowners, no board member on it, ever. The pear tree corner gets fenced and replanted as a community garden. Meet those, and the invoice goes back in the envelope, and your office stays where it is, as my tenant, on paper, the way my grandmother should have been thanked instead of forgotten. Denny Kurtz moved to accept. It carried in a minute. My mother did not yell. Yelling was never her instrument. Procedure was, and procedure had just changed hands. She squared her agenda pages twice, then set the gavel on the corner of my grandmother's plat. Wood on mylar. The sound was very small. Then I'll offer my resignation, she said, to the room and to nobody. Effective tonight. As she passed, she stopped, close enough that only I could hear. I saw that paper, 1996. She showed it to me, and then she put it back in the box. That is what 11 months of Fridays had been carrying under the tape. Not a ramp. A woman of 33 shown a gift and then watching it put away. 2 weeks later, I filled out a complaint form for the State Attorney General's Consumer Division and attached the 2011 tally sheet. Dates, counts. The word carried in her own pen. I didn't sign it. I folded it into the green box next to the 1996 deed. 2 papers in that box were never handed over. My grandmother withheld a gift. I withheld a weapon. I still don't know whether that makes us the same or the opposite. So I added a third, and that one I delivered. In October, I signed a deed conveying an undivided half interest in Lot 41 to Roberta Cardiff. Simone stamped it herself. I couldn't give her what my grandmother didn't, but I could give her half, and her name beside mine in the index. The only place in this county where 2 people stay attached, whether they speak or not. The audit voided 19 fines. Cy Nadeau got $1,100 back and built a taller trellis. The garden went in that fall, the sign reading Opal and Roberta's Pier Garden. My mother didn't come to the unveiling. In November, a Polaroid appeared in my mailbox. No note. The pear tree, 1996, a young woman under it, on the back. In that teacher's hand. I was 33. Ardith says somebody saw her out there at 6 in the morning, alone, watering. This morning was a Friday. 7:20 came and went, and the street stayed empty. I walked Bertie out to Lot 41, handed her my tape measure, and showed her how to read a plat. My grandmother said I understood the land, and my mother did the paperwork. She was wrong. We were all doing the same thing. We only differed on who we handed it to. The ramp is still there, 6 boards to a porch that doesn't need them. Some call that holding on. I call it a marker that somebody was cared for here. My mother has never apologized. We own half an acre and a tree together, and that may be the shape this keeps. 3 questions. I read every comment. Who started this? My mother or my grandmother? Would you have signed that complaint? And what paper is sitting in a box in your life, never handed over? Tell me below and subscribe. Next week, Cy Nadeau and 4 years of tomatoes.